hoping the washing machine is not causing too much noise. But I try to vlog now. Sometimes in the past I've tried to record around if I'm doing like washing clothes or anything like that. But perhaps for this it's not too bad to have a bit of noise. It's different to if I was recording a podcast episode. Perhaps I would be better not to have that. But I think today's probably the first day in probably since over a week ago, when sort of talking about interactions with my mum and things like that, where I felt calmer than I have throughout this last week or so. And it's quite a relief as well. The anxiety is still there. Like I felt almost a flutter of chest pain when I was emailing this massage therapist about prices and just getting an understanding of what they could offer. I'd actually been to a massage session, and I was just trying to clarify prices and different things I could work on with them. In my last one, it was kind of like a shoulder, neck, and head massage. So, and when I mentioned about anxiety, they suggested that reflexology could be a really good option, and never really considered or tried that before. So, but just with the emails, there was some anxiety coming up there, mainly because I think I wasn't fully understanding what they were saying in regards to what they could offer, and so I was trying to kind of clarify that in the emails, and just the act of typing and trying to construct a clear sort of dialogue, just as if my struggles with texting, it's the same, of course it's the same thing, same sort of stress of cognitive stresses to try and communicate clearly. And at the end of it, there was still a bit of, it wasn't complete clarity, but I decided just to let it go. I've booked in a session of reflexology, and they kindly were offering, sort of a shorter session with, which would be a lower price than just one big session. So I could perhaps have, a numerous, amount of short sessions versus one big session. And so I think I understood most of it, but the mind can play games. It can kind of ruminate and have the energy of, do I really understand what's going on? And just that little bit of stress was a lot. I could feel it in my chest. So there is still the sense of a lot of sort of vulnerability of what my body's been through and mind, in regards to that difficult episode of anxiety, or severe anxiety, I kind of put it, because sort of someone whose anxiety is generally part of every day, but this was obviously more severe, where there was sort of chest pain and things. But before that, not to say it's carried on, I'm still almost recovering a little bit from just feeling that. I can still feel pain in my chest now. But generally today, especially this morning, there was a nice sense of calm. And I was just thinking, is this what it's like when the anxiety is right at a minimum? And is this what it can feel like if anxiety wasn't there? And I didn't want to compare it to other people, but the question had come up, is this what it feels like for those who may not have, regular anxiety? I guess it was more of a powerful emotion because there's often almost a bit of a background of anxiety day to day, so it was a contrast perhaps to have it very low this morning, and I think I got it's hard to say I've got I don't feel I'd ever say I've got like an amazing sleep, but I got a lot better sleep than I have the previous nights. So even though I felt like I was dreaming a lot and some of it awake, but in comparison to the previous number of days, I got a restful sleep to some degree. So I think that helped as well, I'm sure. And I think with the time gone by from sort of those events that triggered that kind of severe anxiety, that the more distant time's going by, the more the more my body is sort of calming down. One thing I wanted to mention today is that I want to sort of try and focus on what I need, and I mean that in a very sort of small way, sort of moment to moment, and not so much in a big way, but I think times of when, such as if I'm in company with somebody and I'm feeling mentally tired, then perhaps it would be good if I was able to act on that, instead of sort of holding tight and just enduring that. Perhaps I can sort of act and disengage in a certain activity, if it's a conversation, or if I'm doing some work with somebody and I'm mentally exhausted, then it's still quite difficult for me to sort of speak up and do that. But that's one sort of direction I'd like to go in. Really try and listen to myself, especially during the times now where sort of vulnerability and sensitivity is so high. I think it's a bit more critical to sort of listen to that voice, or that feeling or sensation, or that sort of natural instinct, whether it's I'm struggling to continue participating in a conversation, if I'm feeling too drained. Again, I'm hoping that's not too loud. It sounds really loud, but I'm hoping the mic is not picking it up. Hopefully, at least you can hear me. That's clear enough anyway, I hope. We shall see. But because I think too many times, probably out of niceness and also anxiety of not wanting to be rude, or where I kind of endure a lot, where it may not seem like a stressful event on the outside, but even if I'm feeling very drained and I need to be alone and I'm in company, then perhaps be a bit more, I wouldn't say selfish is the right word, but maybe be a bit more attentive to what I need. Because I think it's happened the other way round, where I've been with people and maybe for them it's second nature, and without the issue of anxiety, I'm sure it's a lot easier to speak up, to say, oh, I'm feeling quite tired now, I'm gonna head off. And often when I'm in sort of a lot of social interactions, it's almost, I don't want to be rude to say that, so I almost wait for the other person to say, oh yeah, it's nice seeing you, and I'm going to take off now. So, because it's almost too overwhelming to say it myself, in fear of, am I being rude? Has it been long? Has it been like a sort of socially acceptable length of time I've seen this person, where I'm not just sort of heading off really soon after seeing them, and so all of those sort of thoughts are quite big and almost panoramic in my mind, and I'd imagine for many others it's not like that. It's just, oh, I'm feeling tired, let's communicate that immediately, and it's quite an automatic thing. So yeah, to try and I think the big one is when I'm in company and I'm feeling mentally drained, is to kind of have a bit of a better balance where I don't have to, almost in that second here, I've got to take off and then suddenly storm out and walk away, but sort of a maybe I'm trying to think of the right words that will help me be okay with this. But yeah, maybe just that itself, it's okay to sort of listen to myself, and especially with one's health as well, because in some ways it's not going to be level with sort of social standards. For example, a typical person may be able to endure social conversations a lot longer than those who suffer with symptoms where socializing is extremely draining. So it's important to try and not judge myself in a kind of neurotypical sort of expectations of things, it can be really difficult to do. So maybe another one again is maybe not picking up my phone if I'm feeling quite drained, or maybe pick my places better, so I don't always have to if I'm drained. And it doesn't have to be sort of stringent rules, but maybe just listening to the body and mind is enough to say, because there may be times when I'm feeling drained and someone's calling and I feel like I want to be there for them, then it's also okay to think, oh, maybe I can take this phone call even though I'm feeling tired. The machine's in the fast spin cycle. You can imagine this recording and it's just me miming, and the only thing that can be heard is the washing machine. That would be pretty funny. Not sure if I should speak louder now, or if the sound is actually completely fine and I'm just suddenly shouting in a microphone. I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll just continue talking normally, or slightly louder. Maybe in one sense, listening to my needs is a bit clearer, because especially in this time, my health is more vulnerable than it's been in a long time, such as the chest pain and anxiety. Even writing these emails or communicating with this person. So that's something that will be good for me to do. And also needs could be, perhaps I need to just pull on to my noise cancelling headphones and really zone out for a bit, and do that more often, or taking moments to just breathe. And there's also a balance as well of what I'm willing to do, because it sounds silly, but with this sort of low mood as well, if I can use the word depression, but it also counteracts sometimes the ability to try and help oneself. I find that's often it's hard for me to share that, because it feels like there's a judgment. People will judge that, to say, because often there's clear things that can help, but there's also things that I don't feel like I'm, especially in the long term, able to keep up and do. So I kind of don't know how to word this, but I kind of have to choose or carefully think about those things that help, and those things I feel like I'm able to do, the capabilities that I'm able to do. And perhaps in some ways it shows itself with just the activities that I do to help, such as recently listening to a lot of ASMR. I find that's helpful to sort of have that, in some ways, an indirect interaction or someone's energy in that way to help calm me down, or just almost as maintenance as well, so I don't have to doesn't have to be a really difficult state where I listen to that, but I can listen to it as just a part of the continual relaxation, and so perhaps just be aware of those activities that I find I'm sort of naturally doing or gravitating to, and just being aware of those as kind of helpful tools when times are difficult. Listening to what I need. And at times that's even going to be difficult with, of course, the sort of foggy, cloudy thinking. Sometimes there can be times when I'm perhaps searching for what I need and I'm not able to, or that process of finding it's going to be difficult. But at least maybe there's a healthy intention of not withstanding or enduring something that's stressful, which is something I've done for a long time, and part of that is probably traumatic in the sense of sort of the parent-child relationship of what's been endured in a home in that sense, and not necessarily that somebody else has perhaps the sense of the amount that I've endured myself. I've not asked that question of what I need. I've kind of just endured a lot, and I think now getting to this sort of point of where there is things like chest pain, and it's gone into quite a severe state, so it's now almost sort of where there's not much choice in a sense but to have to change something with that way. So one of those is perhaps minimizing the enduring of things. Perhaps it's enough just to have that intention for now, not have everything figured out. So today's been a sort of needed alone day. It's with some company yesterday, and I kind of felt it then, actually, where I was doing it's kind of helping with one of their projects, on doing some stuff on the laptop, and I was very quickly feeling mentally drained, and I sort of endured continuing that activity for a bit longer, in order to try and help, and I think at some point I managed to sort of consciously take a break, and so kind of maybe shortened it than what I used to. So that's a positive. And I guess there's a scary sense as well, because there's going to be some point when I'm going to have to try and sort of speak up about things, and not in a confrontational way, but say for example someone wants to meet up and they need help with something. It's not as an automatic yes, which is, I'm not sure how it's going to go, because it's so conditioned in me to try and if someone who perhaps benefits from having company and it helps them, then, and they ask would you send me a message, say can we meet up, then often it's a yes. Okay, let's do it. One thing just to note, when I was having that sort of massage appointment, there was some conversation happening there as well, and I found that sort of challenging as well, because it was an interesting conversation. We were talking about health, and I wonder, because the massage was done with me sitting in a chair, it wasn't sort of on a massage table, so perhaps it's more of a sort of social position to be in, if that makes sense, because you're more open than, I can imagine a massage table sometimes there'd be the thought of this person's in deep relaxation, and sort of conversation comes and goes, and I guess it did in the chair as well. At the start there was a lot of conversation, because it's a new person, and kind of just asking general questions and talking about health, but I found myself sort of responding to stuff that I guess I had an interest in, but it was draining me to respond in that way. It was almost like, do you know, one of those, this will be an extreme example, but like say someone's having brain surgery and they stimulate part of the brain, and it felt like it was almost an involuntary sort of response when, there was kind of, it was almost like that, like someone's pouring my brain, and I kind of had to respond when I needed to. So I think we were talking about sort of natural medicines and also like pharmaceutical medicines, and just my difficulty in trusting that. But because immediately, there was questions and there was answers, and it was almost as if I was being dragged this way and that way, and of course a lot of it is all my own stuff and my own symptoms and what I was going through. So it wasn't, so it's kind of just feeling that a little bit. But there was moments where I was able to slow myself down and be silent as well, and kind of stop myself from going on these big responses about things, and sort of get some space between that sort of semi-automatic response about stuff that I have views on, or my own opinions. I was going to begin writing that sort of letter. I can't remember how much I shared in my last vlog. Feels like sometimes I there's a good dose of amnesia going on, because I feel like I can't remember much at all from a previous recording, but I'm pretty sure I mentioned about sort of writing my mum a letter, and I was planning to do that today, but it just didn't seem to happen. I was going to go to the library this morning, but by the time I sort of sat down and had sort of my morning cup of coffee, which I'm still doing with the intermittent fasting, it was close to lunchtime, so I was thinking that I didn't want to be in a position where I'm sort of at the library really hungry and tired, and sort of to make lunch, I had a sense I wouldn't have the energy to do that. So I kind of just stayed home today, and I don't think I'll go out this afternoon. I just don't feel I'm up to it. And I think I'll try and upload this here in my in where I am now, even though obviously there's a difficulty of reception, but I've downloaded some movies and series on Netflix, so if I do watch something tonight, which I'm gonna try and tune in to watch something, which is another struggle, but I'm gonna try and do that tonight. Then hopefully that will alleviate the bandwidth on my phone, so it's not using that to stream, and hopefully it will slowly upload this. Yeah, one thing also to mention is about communicating my needs. Sometimes people may not know how severe certain things can be for me, such as social interaction, and I guess in some respects it's my responsibility to does that sound right? My responsibility to communicate my needs. I guess it is, because they can't read my mind, and people can be intuitive, I think that's the word, but it's also my responsibility to say yes and no to things as well. And generally just trying to explain stuff. This is, I feels like most of these vlogs are me saying things over and over, but I guess that's the great thing about this space. It's not for me sort of to entertain or or to or for it to be a sort of content creation, that sort of thing. It's a space just to say whatever I want, that kind of therapeutic space, such as a counselling session in some ways, where it's okay to repeat stuff, or it's okay to talk about the same things, and it's nothing and it's all okay, I guess. Kind of safe space to as a sort of therapeutic setting would be with a counsellor or other type of sort of healthcare professional. But I think communication is becoming still really difficult via messages. It's sometimes I'm writing a message, I'll be there for a long time, writing, rewriting, editing, and reading. Is that what I mean, and how would that come across, and trying to extract what I'm feeling and put it into words, which again can be a very automated, nanosecond thing for perhaps sort of don't know what the right words, but I think there's a series called Atypical. It's about this autistic kid, and I think they use neurotypical person as a sort of, maybe I'll use that for the moment, but like a neurotypical person, and again I'm not sure how much that is understood, but I don't know if there's an easy way to try and sort of communicate that, and also things sometimes won't be remembered, so it could sort of, and it's not someone else's fault, it's just how life is, I think, where I may communicate, I have this difficulty, or I could communicate, I may not talk to you, I may not be able to communicate for a little bit if I'm going through a difficult time, and then sometimes that when a time late down the line happens where I disappear for a bit, then it's what I said before is kind of, it can be sometimes forgotten. So I don't know the solution to that really, where like explaining so someone can understand. I feel like there's almost a limit to that as well, because of course to some extent they're never going to fully understand, but maybe a helpful understanding, if there's some sort of area, but even that can be difficult. It's probably most severe, in the relationship of a parent relationship, and what's come up for me recently, and it's been a huge thing of the last few decades of trying, to have a parent understand what's going on with me, and why things are difficult. So it's that constant, it's a bit of like a sort of, effort to give understanding, but also there's something pulling at that's maybe their own perceptions of understanding, and it's probably something that's a conflict, because it's like two forces going against each other, but in some ways forces going against each other as well. Like if there was a dialogue and I was trying to explain stuff, I'll be saying my dialogue and they'll be saying their point of view, and sometimes it can be a clash, and or other times I'm trying to give understanding and it's not absorbed. But I can feel now my head's very, even trying to explain this, my head's kind of gone a little bit, so it's just trying to acknowledge that. And this is stuff that's really hard to communicate, because it's kind of almost, as I've said this before, like communicating why you can't communicate. And it's kind of, because it feels like it's quite severe in that way. And it's when someone gets a sense of someone's going through a difficult time, they may think, oh, that's like level 2, like they may be feeling a little bit down or a bit anxious, but without kind of knowing the ins and outs, like for example me to convey words or write out a text and to hold, like now I've lost that sort of thought map, I guess, of understanding of the point I was making about communicating and things, and it's hard to communicate that. So you almost feel like you're up against this massive tidal wave, and it's just you, and it's like and there's not enough, it's just overwhelming, I guess. So it just feels like all your explanation gets swallowed up, and it just leads to pain, because someone's kind of got their own viewpoint and understanding, and you're not able to sort of say your part of what's going on, or respond to or correct their misunderstandings. And in some ways it makes sense, because with symptoms I'm feeling, to simplify it, let's just say that that I'm unwell, or the mind is unwell, and I don't mean that as an identity, that's who I am, but my current condition of my mind is very unwell. So if someone understands that, it feels like I'm going in circles, digging myself into the hole and going in circles and everything else. But if someone can kind of understand the severity of my health, then perhaps a lot of sort of a blanket understanding will happen with that, whether it's me not answering phone calls. And this is where I think action can also give better understanding than words in some ways. Like recently I've just blocked sort of my mum's communication on my phone, and it's purely to protect myself from feeling those sharp anxiety symptoms. If I was to get a message from my mum, or a phone call, that would immediately, especially now I'm so vulnerable, but but for me it seems clear as day to do that because I'm sort of protecting myself. But from another person's perspective, or that person, they've blocked me on the phone. They may not be the understanding along with that to say how much it severely affects me. So yeah, I think I'm going to quit while I'm behind with this sort of. So I feel like maybe this is again what I started with, listening to what I need and listening to how I'm feeling. So yeah, I can feel my mind quite drained by just trying to talk about this stuff. So perhaps it's good to let it go for now. Maybe that's another skill and tool of just dropping thought patterns and dropping narratives, and like the massage email stuff, I kind of got some understanding, but I've also just going to just drop it as well and just see how the next appointment goes and just take things from there. And I think there's a certain sanctuary feeling of that, of just trying to keep things simple, and also acknowledging that that I'm unwell, and it's okay to drop it. I don't have to kind of try and figure it out. And I feel that's where it comes in use, where it's not an identity, but it's almost a realignment of my current reality. So I'm not sort of operating outside of that, and again, meaning like neurotypical standards and stuff, but operating inside of my own, what I'm capable of doing, and I'm not kind of stepping out of that, where that's where stress and anxiety will quickly build up. So that's important to I totally forgot the point I was just making, which is okay. Yeah, dropping things, that was it. Yeah, so I feel like that's okay, and in some ways it makes it easier to sometimes it can make it easier to do, knowing that my health is in a certain way. It almost allows that to be okay, and to think, oh yeah, that it makes sense to drop it and to just sort of be grounded in how I'm feeling. Perhaps that's a way to put it. So, for example, the grounded in how I'm feeling would be, I can't hold these simple logical thoughts or a thought pattern and a viewpoint of that. I can't hold that and process it. Then okay, let's drop that for the moment. Let's just let that go. It feels, I want to say permission. Again, I'm trying to see how I'm going to try and communicate this, but because, maybe because of my health, it's like, yes, you should be letting go of these things, because it's such a difficult place. So that it's okay to do this, and it's almost an expectation as well, in a healthy way. So of course you can't hold all of these thoughts right now. The condition of what you're going through and what you're dealing with, that's understandable. You can't do that, and that's okay to kind of maybe give myself permission, or that it's almost a natural thing in my current state to do, to make that okay. I think grounding is kind of covers that area, I guess, of grounded in how I'm feeling, and and even if a slight sense of feeling drained, like just a few minutes ago when talking about the massage emails and all of that stuff. But So let's kind of talk about tonight. So I think it's kind of like late afternoon at the moment, I think. So I sort of did an intermittent fast besides a sort of cup of coffee with a bit of sugar. Always got to have a bit of sugar in the coffee. And then for lunch I had like a salad sandwich, as I usually do. And I actually had like this Trek bar. I'm not sure if you get those, if they're in the States as well as the UK. I have a feeling they are. I know in the US they have Cliff bars? Something like that. And I think I've had one of those and these were quite good. But yeah, I had one of those as a kind of middle snack, which was, I didn't want to be too strict on sort of not having any snacks and that sort of stuff. So, and tonight I've got some sort of tofu bites which I can bake in the oven, sort of blocks of tofu in a breaded sort of crumble bread thing on the outside. So, and I can have that with some, I'm going to try making some noodles, and I've got some frozen mixed vegetables which I can sort of saute, and I think maybe have that as a meal this evening. And yeah, I'm going to try and watch something. I've downloaded quite a lot of stuff, and I like that I'm able to do that, so it doesn't have to stream things, which is quite nice, so you don't get too many buffering interruptions, which I quite often do when watching things, with the reception on my phone here. So yeah, perhaps just a simple evening of making that dinner, watching something and uploading this, and maybe towards bedtime I'm going to listen to an audiobook. I actually stopped listening to the Three Sisters book, partly because I lost interest towards the end of it. Maybe I just wasn't connected to the end of a part of the story of when sisters were kind of making a life for themselves and having children and family, and I think it was maybe a bit intense as well, because there's lots of sort of characters and the way it's narrated. But I moved on to another a different audiobook, which is about it's an American book. It's about a woman who comes across a person who is actually on this bridge, and he's really vulnerable, like he's almost attempting suicide, I think. And she stops, and she's a therapist but doesn't tell him she is, and she tries to help him. And perhaps I won't mention, I think I'm at halfway through it, but that's the kind of premise in the book. And I found that when I read that, I really related, of course, to that sort of story. So I'm listening to that at the moment. So yeah, maybe that's something I can do. That's a healthy activity to do closer to bedtime, so I can kind of get off the laptop and not get into like a crazy, or not got into like a loop on YouTube where I'm just sort of watching reaction videos and all of that pattern of behavior until like past bedtime. It's probably another benefit of me downloading stuff, so I don't perhaps switch straight to going online to YouTube and stuff. So so I think that seems like a nice part of the evening. And of course, take out my washing once it's dried, and perhaps tomorrow there's a kind of better intention to sort of get myself organised and ready a bit early. I think what delayed me this morning a little bit was I kind of trimmed my hair, and I was probably running a little bit past. It's probably a bit later in the morning than I intended. So maybe tomorrow, just to get a bit of a quicker start to the day, with the intention of going to the library to perhaps start brainstorming or beginning the process of trying to write the letter, which I may talk about more in another recording, realising this is it's already 45 minutes in, so and I think maybe it's good for me to stop, to give myself a bit of a break. Hoping for a restful sleep tonight, having sort of a healthy meal for dinner, and just to continue relaxing this afternoon, evening, and hopefully I can get myself back to a really nice calm state. I think that's it.